all this here, and we are all set. I'm where I need to be. But Catherine, do you go by Catherine?
I do, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a treat. And
Oh,
sorry if
good.
I
I
was
hope
just
so. I
getting
hope
like
I don't disappoint.
no, no, none. This is excellent. I'm excited for you guys, by the way. In general, before I get to official stuff, you guys are doing exciting stuff, and
Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah.
oh, very fun. Well, again, I respect your time, and I'm so on board for what you guys are doing, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. But if I may, should I just jump right into it to respect your time most?
Sure, yeah, whatever. And do you go by Jeff? Do your students call you Mr. Moreau?
They do call me Mr.
Is
Moreau.
that
Yeah. They call me Mr. Moreau, but
okay?
yes, Jeff is perfectly fine. No
Okay.
problem at all. But could you introduce yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit about what you do with the company.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Katherine Cruz. I work for Stoke Space Technologies. At Stoke, we are on a mission to design 100% reusable rockets. And so, what that means is that no one out there is reusing their second stage rocket vehicle. And we are going to, right? And we even started with it. So, what I do is I manage the test site for Stoke. And at our test site, we test all the components of the rocket. We test the engine, we test the vehicle. We do all sorts of testing out here so that we have confidence in it when it goes to fly. And so, yeah, my background is I'm a mechanical engineer by, I guess, by degree. I went to school for that and um, did test engineering at Blue Origin for 5 years and then moved here and did test engineering and test site management, basically is my primary focus.
Wonderful. If I may, hold on a second. Because you mentioned that, I
Okay,
knew
okay.
that your company had several people that were Blue Origin on there. I didn't, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll leave it off camera because we're no longer Blue Origin. We're not Blue Origin. We're now Stoke Space. I don't have any Stoke Space gear on me right now, but I have
Okay, we'll
off
try to
script.
change that.
I have an off script question for you. Moses Lake,
Okay.
correct? That's where you are.
Moses Lake, Washington. Yes, yeah. So
Um,
we are headquartered out of Seattle, but
okay.
we you don't really want to test big hazardous explosive things in a big city. And so we're that's the awesome thing about Moses Lake. It's close enough that I still think we're pretty nimble and efficient. People can kind of drive back and forth from headquarters out here. It's a few hours, it's 3 hours, but we also we have plenty of space to make a lot of noise, do all of our operations and move quickly out here.
So
Yeah,
the question
Moses Lake.
I'm go ahead. What I'm just starting to think about right now, and I hadn't thought about this previously, probably should have. Um, how long will you be able to be at Moses Lake? Because some of the regulations and altitude restrictions and clearances, it's a wonderful place for where you are now, but is it going to be able to be a long term?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question. And maybe I'll start by saying that Moses Lake will always and forever, the plan is that it would be our ground test site. And launch operations wouldn't happen out of Moses Lake. So yeah, looking at other sites for that, we do have planned. It's kind of I know you were going to ask about future, flight plans later, but I guess a quick little teaser. We
Go
do
for
have
it.
plans. It's on our website for our hopper, our second stage hopper test, and so we're basically going to build up the whole second stage vehicle, and out here in Moses Lake, lift off, hover, move a little bit, and land, and not go crazy high, but just a little bit to show that we, all the systems check out, we can control it, it lands and just do like this, 100% checkout of everything and see what works, what doesn't work, and improve it after that. But that will happen here in Moses Lake. But like I said, that's pretty low to the ground, and so it's not launching. All launch operations will happen elsewhere.
Okay. Do you have
Mhm.
you might not be allowed to tell me, but do you have a preferred site that you want to be expanding to? Because I know we're over here in Pennsylvania and only
Mhm.
less than 100 miles from here is Wallops Flight Facility.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of stoked, if you will, that Rocket Lab
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
next week. I'm just looking, it's slightly over a week. They're doing their first big launch from Walps. They're on their first couple launches there, but they're
Yeah.
kind of expanding into what was not a big site for some other things. Are do you know where you guys want to go?
Yeah, I would say maybe exploring options right now. I don't know.
That's
I don't know
fair.
what we've released, but I'll say that, yeah, exploring options.
They haven't given you the final call on where it's going to be.
No. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, excellent. Okay, I got a little bit off here, but I'm going to go right on
No,
to
all
my.
good.
I didn't know you were from Blue Origin, but my next question, sort of my first real question. From what I can see, you have engineers and executives from SpaceX, Blue Origin, Firefly, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and I'm sure others that I don't even know. What do you think it is that's pulling? I mean, you say 5 years at Blue Origin?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
yourself were with Blue Origin. They have some name recognition. People know them in some ways. What do you think it's been drawing people from so many other places into? You guys are relatively new.
Yeah.
Really beginning of 20. I know technically I think 2019, but really beginning of 2020 is when things are starting to pick up some momentum with you guys. So what's drawing people to you more than others, you think?
Yeah. I think it's probably two things. At least for me, it was two things. One, the engine design is super unique, which I know you wanted to ask about that too, but it's really unique and and so it's just fun to get to work on something that's kind of pushing the boundaries or different or challenging. And so I think that any most like engineers or curious people would definitely be intrigued and want to be a part of that and see where it goes. And so I think the unique design was one part of it. And then secondly, um, I don't know, working at a small company in a startup, you just get a lot of ownership. You get to do a
Hmm.
lot of things yourself and grow your own skill set, and like it's really fulfilling. And like I think that feeling is even addicting. Like you get to build something yourself, see it work, and then you just want to do it again, right? And so that, like as an example, maybe I started in April of 2021, and so just under 2 years ago. There was me and one other engineer who were hired on about the same time. And when we came out to the Moses Lake test site, it was just like an empty field. There's nothing out here. And
Wow.
that is where we started, right? And so how fun is that, right? You just get like a blank slate, clean piece of paper and get to make it your own. And yeah, and that's so fun. And I mean, that summer it was the two of us and an intern, and we built up our
Wow.
first test cell where we're doing all of our thruster testing. The three of us did that in a summer. And so yeah, I mean, just over a few months, we took this empty piece of property and we made it into an active test site. A few months later, we were testing our pumps. A few months later, we broke ground on our engine stand. A few months after that, we're testing our engine for the first time. And so things are moving so fast, right? And you're seeing the fruits of your labor like so quickly. And it's just, yeah, it's really fulfilling. And again, I think that feeling is addicting, right? And so people want to be a part of something like that. And I think that's why people join Stoke.
That's awesome. That's really I like that. That's excellent. Um, because I just happened to mention them earlier, and I noticed they weren't in my list. Have you taken anybody from Rocket Lab? Do you know?
Not that I know.
Okay, because
Mm-mm.
they're also they're not one of I mean they're growing. They have
Hmm.
different goals than you do in many ways, but there's some overlap. But excellent. Very cool. And a tiny little interesting piece with that, since you said it was the two of you and an intern.
Yeah.
So when you're having like your hype videos and your hot fire videos and other things, are some of those then are there early ones that are filmed on somebody's cell phone? Because you didn't bring out a photographer or a videographer for your early stuff there.
Yeah.
Is some of it poor quality
The
or just no footage?
No, I was gonna say the earlier videos are a lot of like GoPro videos and GoPros and like buy a fancy camera and put it out there. And but yeah, we weren't hiring people, we were doing that ourselves. But I feel like you can get pretty decent image quality from a GoPro.
Oh, you really
And
can.
so all of our early stuff is all GoPro video. And yeah, it still looks pretty cool.
Very cool. Excellent. I love it. I'll go right on to my next official one here. Your idea for a reusable second stage sounds revolutionary and really seems like something that could potentially shake things up a little bit. I know that you've begun testing the engine, and you were already talking about this idea of a little bit of the hopper. But what is your optimistic timeline, if you may, for when you think you might be actually testing first and second stage in tandem, maybe even at altitude? I know your first one's not at altitude.
Hmm. Hmm.
What are we thinking?
Yeah, so I made sure I was allowed to say this before we met here. But we are planning 2025 for
Okay.
our first orbital launch using the first and second stage
Orbital.
vehicles. So 2025, yeah. And so there's a lot of work to do until then, right? But we have the cool stuff is that, like I said, we've already started testing our second stage engine. We're doing our second stage, the hop tests, like I mentioned, and we've already started testing our first stage components
Okay.
and working on, you know, first stage engine development. And so all that stuff's in the works already. And so 2025 is definitely aggressive, but it's a good goal, I think.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
And there will be little things along 2025 orbital. Like there's so many other things you'll be doing
I
before you
know,
get to
right?
then.
We're
So
gonna be so busy.
yeah, that's very exciting. I'm excited for that for you. Wonderful.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I'll have to be keeping my eyes open for that. But I'll go right on to my next official one here because this is wonderful.
I I have
Okay,
a question maybe for you real quick.
sure,
In your class, like, could you tell me maybe what your students are like? Like,
sure,
are they interested in space? What age or what year are they?
sure.
Things like that. I'm
I
curious.
have all high school seniors.
Oh,
Physics
fun.
happens
Okay.
to be a required course in at this high school. So because physics is a required
Oh,
course here, I've got many levels of it. So I've got some levels. Our lowest level is you might not go on to college, but you're going to get the basics, and you won't get as heavy math of it, but you're going to get some of the conceptual foundations. Go through a large range of it. But even and then we've got a more college prep, we've got honors, and depending on the year, we often have two different levels of AP, one algebra based, one calculus based. So
mm,
there's a huge range of potential where they could go.
that's
But
awesome.
honestly, no matter who you are, in what level of this, one of the easy places for me to be able to say what is physics doing right now is like, well, and I don't have one of yours, but I have like my starship right here, and
Yeah,
I could
that's
talk about what's
cool.
going on with this, whether we're looking at the terminal velocity as it's fighting air resistance, trying to land that way, or there's multiple things we can do with where is physics going right now. And it's like, well, let's hop over to who's trying to launch something, what problems they're running into, who just blew up, and like there's a lot we can say for current. We're in another space race in a way,
Yeah,
and the private space race in some ways, and it's different goals that they're doing, but it can be a really nice way to get people saying, well, what is it? What's actually going on? Where is this actually being used? And what are some current pieces that are maybe seemingly more relatable?
yeah.
Nothing wrong with James Webb as far as where things are, but that is far enough away and not as easy to interact with. But when there's a Wallops flight facility launch, we could actually look out our window and say, yep, there it's going across the
That's
sky.
crazy. So can you actually see it
Yeah.
from like where your school is? Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Now they don't do that many orbital launches from Wallops. Like
Right, right. But
very.
like even like once, like I mean, yeah, even just seeing it like one time in your lifetime
Oh
is a
yeah.
huge
Oh yeah.
experience. Yeah.
But and although they don't do many, there's one the 23rd.
Yeah.
Monday the
Yeah.
23rd is a orbital launch that you will be able to see from Kennett Square,
That's so
Pennsylvania.
cool.
And it is
That's
like
so cool.
Florida's spoiled. People in Florida, they see launches. Yep, there's another launch.
Yeah, but
But
everyone, like so many people have never seen a launch. Most people have never seen a launch before, right? So what like that's like so cool and like inspiring and motivating to be able to witness something like that, you know?
absolutely. So I think it really gives some perspective there because I mean, yeah, you can see the International Space Station. There's my international. You can see International Space Station go by, but a rocket launch it can be inspiring. I know most people in the
Yeah.
rocket industry that like where do they start? Looking at a rocket launch and then just being inspired by a rocket launch. So
Yeah.
I think that for my class, a big part is what's going on in physics and where is it in the world, and it's well,
Yeah.
what is happening in some of these companies. And right now, there's fascinating things happening in Stoke Space, so you're very much worth being excited about with that.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
so it depends on the back to your question. It depends on the class as far as exactly where we are
Yeah.
with, but
Okay,
it's
that's cool.
it's meant to be a a first taste of physics.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
what that encompasses very much depends on the level that we're
Yeah.
starting at.
Well, that's
How
awesome that it's required because then like every student gets exposed to it. My dad always said growing up that if you want to know how the world works, take a physics class. And because everything is like related to physics, right? And so it's just really cool that your students at least get exposed to that and get to see if it's something they're interested in, you know, no matter what level they're at.
Well, I happen to agree with you. So thank you. I think it's cool too. And I'm glad that they get to be exposed to that.
Cool.
Uh,
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just curious.
no interruption. All you're good. Speaking of some physics here, my next one is a very physicsy question. Newton's third law tells us we can't really thrust ourselves in a direction without expelling at least a little bit of mass in the opposite direction. We have to push something away. And that's part of why we have to use up some rocket fuel to push ourselves around in space. Your second stage design, it doesn't look like most second stages. It doesn't look like most of what we see. If I were to try to put a parallel for some of this, for a space shuttle somewhere over there, for other things that we've done in space, it doesn't seem like there's a fair parallel. Does it seem like this design will be significantly more efficient in the propulsion that it allows for? I mean, you have all these tiny little thrusters. And so pull my question in, the efficiency for the amount of fuel that you're expending, the thrust you're getting out. I'm guessing it's notably better. Can you give us any idea of how much better, if that is the case?
Yeah, I guess what I would say too, it's like definitely different and weird looking. Like you pointed out, like it's incredibly unique. And the biggest reason for that is that we are on a mission to make it reusable, right? And so a traditional bell nozzle, right? Think about how much energy you had to expend just to get to where you were in space. You have to go through all that again just to get back on the ground, right? And
Yeah.
so the right, a traditional bell nozzle is just maybe like not super robust to that and is fragile and so our approach was something different to make an engine that would be able to withstand all of those like forces in that really extreme environment re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And so so that's why it's instead of one like giant bell nozzle that is probably very thin-walled and very fragile and would break upon re-entry. I don't know. The it's a bunch of mini guys all in a circle. And so you get the advantage of having a like high expansion ratio because it still kind of looks like a big bell nozzle, but really it's this all of these little thrusters inside the space heat shield that's really protecting the whole vehicle, right? And that base heat shield's cooled and those thrusters are integrated and part of the base heat shield. And so all of your precious hardware is actually protected by the space heat shield that's being actively cooled by our, liquid hydrogen propellant. And so that is that's maybe the main reason. Oh, I'm sure to be honest, there's people way smarter than me at this company who designed the the engine and the system in the vehicle. And so maybe we could ask them what other reasons there were, but our main objective is something that's 100% reusable, right? And so that's really the main reason that it looks so weird is that we want to be able to reuse this thing. And then of course, like we get a lot of efficiency because of that, right? Because it has a high expansion ratio, because it's using hydrogen, all sorts of things come from that, which is pretty awesome.
So I think I'm following with this. So would it be okay if I said that the efficiency maybe comes more from both the fuel source and the reusability than the pure miles per gallon or like what do you get out of the fuel capacity of it? But it's more like no, you don't waste something in the process, and yeah, the reusability then gives you the efficiency, not necessarily your thrust per pounds or anything.
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting way to look at it. Like, if you're not throwing something away and you get more uses out of it, you're already more efficient than you were, right? You don't have to make it again. You don't have to test it again. You don't have to, take all this risk and time and money. So that's definitely one way to look at it that I wasn't actually thinking about. And I think that's a really good point that you make it once and then you can use it, I don't know, 100 times or whatever. Then you're already more efficient than if you had to make it 100 times, right? And so, but I would say the reason that this engine, like from a propulsion perspective, is efficient is because of the high expansion ratio, and which is like traditional, right? You look at a lot of upper stage engines and they have really big nozzles because they're trying to expand as much as they can. And so we still get that. It's just made with 30 thrusters in a ring, but it still is expanding out. And then also the propellant. Hydrogen is just like the most efficient propellant you can use. And so those are kind of traditional reasons why it's efficient. But then you look at like operationally, because it can be reused. That's just which was really, I think, the main point, is that you get efficiency from that as well.
Cool. Very cool. I'm very interested in this. And here's a tiny just work. When I saw your animation, it's beautiful. I love your hype video. Yeah, it's an excellent little hype
Yeah,
video you
isn't
guys
it
put
cool?
out
And
last
it
week.
actually explains pretty well. Like you can kind of see like they're all in a ring and how it lands, and you can see the base heat shield. Yeah, I think it's a really cool visual to help explain this. Probably way better than anything I'm saying.
No, no, but you're gonna help me understand something from the video because in the
Oh
video
God,
here,
okay.
you've got your ring. You probably know how many little thrusters are on that ring?
30.
Wow, 30 little thrusters on that ring. Are they all articulating or is it fixed?
So it's a good question. They are not articulating.
Okay.
So the way we would gimbal would be differential throttle. You power some down, you power some up, and then right, that lets you vector, that lets you control your
With 30.
direction. So
Yeah,
yeah, and so that's how we will control our direction.
that makes
But
sense.
yeah, it won't gimbal.
And the video didn't show that. So you have trumped the video
Mhm.
there as far as being able to explain that. So it's a beautiful video, but I didn't feel like I got a like I couldn't tell for sure whether they would be moving in some way or not fixed, but they're
Yeah,
fixed.
yeah, they do. Yeah, it's a good question. All right, yeah, all right, I've turned the video. Thank you.
Excellent.
My confidence boost for the day.
Perfect. Um, I wrote out a lot for this next one, but I think I was just going to start reading my last official one here before I have a little more personal one with this. But this says here what I wrote: Stoke Space is a relatively young company who is seriously shaking things up and impressing many people. You raised over $65 million in funding in 2021, and your company was really only just getting off the ground at the start of the pandemic in 2020. What types of employees make up the main workforce of your organization at this point? I wrote for a company growing as rapidly as you are with so many ideas and needs. I feel like you need to bring in another full squadron of specialists every few months. Like we were almost saying there at the beginning, you didn't have a photographer, videographer. Now you got somebody making your hype videos. And you didn't have any sort of base there at Moses Lake. You had land, and now you have something substantial to work with. So I thought this might be interesting for my students because it's not just you're a mechanical engineer and people aren't, I did get it right, mechanical engineer.
Yep. Hmm.
uh People aren't that surprised when they might hear a mechanical engineer works on a rocket. But
Yeah.
what makes up the workforce, I would imagine things like I could be wrong, but things like electricians, things like just
Hmm.
maybe you're doing a lot of outside contracting for some of the stuff there. But
Absolutely.
there have to be so many bodies in this, and I was curious what actually
Yeah.
makes up the Stoke Space workforce, what type of
Yeah.
positions?
So the team, like the Stoke team, I think we're about 70, 80 people now. And so yeah, I've grown quite a bit, and largely that's made up of engineers like myself, or technician, or manufacturing employees that work with their hands. They help us build, they help us assemble and test these items. But then yeah, there's so many other people that just need that help us get the job done, right? And so like our software team is a really big part of our company as well, helping us develop the tools we need to move quickly, make decisions fast, operate safely. But then we also have like the business side of things, like you're noticing, right? We have someone now who like is making these awesome videos for us, and getting helping with our image, and like getting us out there and getting people talking about Stoke. And so we have business people, we have accounting people, and all of those types of jobs are necessary. And I would say too that maybe to your point, like we also hire a lot of contractors that help us like achieve our mission, right? Achieve our goals. And so we do have construction firms that work with us, other engineering firms that maybe like civil engineers or one that we don't really have any civil engineers on our team. So we work with contracted civil engineers. And so kind of I really feel like anything you could think of, there's some connection to our company, especially a fast growing company that kind of needs to do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, and maybe it's direct hire to maybe it's a partner that works with us, but like so many disciplines are needed to help us, get our work done.
That's helpful, and I think it's something that I often forget with this because while there might only be 70-ish people whose LinkedIn profile says Stoke Space on it, the number of people between end of 2019 and beginning of 2023 that were actually involved in this is going to
Oh, it's
be,
a lot. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
it's hundreds
lot.
and yeah, hundreds and hundreds, but some of them were contracted for this, contracted for
Exactly.
that,
Yep.
but not all of them needed to be technical Stoke Space employees. The
Right.
Even though they were involved in the journey, and
Yeah.
even
Like,
though Stoke Space is paying money to them, and like they're getting a livelihood because of Stoke Space, they might not be an employee.
right. And a good example would be like this site. Like I mentioned, when I started, it was nothing. It was just a field. And 2 years later, we have all these different test areas. Our team here is just about 12 people. And we're a really lean team, right? And so and our specialty is testing rocket engines and rocket hardware, things like that. And so we're primarily engineers and technicians. And so what that means is that, I needed help building out this site to make it, usable. And so we hired an engineering firm that helped us with a lot of the engineering behind, how to like lay out the site, like even bringing utilities on board, helping us with our test stands and our buildings. And I mean, the number of people that helped outside of Stoke was way greater than the number of people who actually work here at this site. And, especially when you include the construction teams and everyone that worked with us to make all this happen. So it is a really good point. Just because you don't work for Stoke or whatever company doesn't mean there's not a way to still partner with them, and be a part of their mission in some way.
Excellent. Very good. This is exciting. Um, my last one was kind of more of a general one for you here. And then I'll have a bonus thought. But if you could give my students are seniors. So
Mhm.
if you could give one piece of advice to a current high school senior, what you've said is already helpful. Like you need a lot of things, so many things. It's not just one job that is the best job for this, but
Not at all. Yeah.
what type of advice in general do you think you'd want to give to somebody as they're heading off into college workforce? Do
Yeah.
you have a piece of advice?
I would say maybe find something that's exciting to you and start exploring that, and that it's okay to change your mind also. That my first job actually had nothing to do with aerospace. It was in the oil and gas industry, and it was very hands-on, and I loved that. And it made me realize I love doing a job where I get to see the hardware and be next to it, right? I'm not a design engineer, but I love to be out next to the hardware and get to see it work. And so right, even though that industry and that path wasn't maybe for me, I got to learn a lot about what interests me, right? And then the next job I got to explore that a little bit more. And so I would say that instead of maybe finding like, maybe I think it's also awesome too if there's an industry that you're super passionate about and like I'm going to be in space. Maybe you don't know that, or maybe you don't know, like maybe you think I think I want to be an engineer, but I don't know what kind. I would say just take a step and see if you like it, and then and do everything you need to do to figure out if you like it. So get involved, do internships, be part of clubs, and definitely put in the work just to see if you like it. And then if you do, that's awesome, right? You know something about yourself, and you know like your trajectory. But if you don't, it's like never too late to change, and then you can, take a step and explore something else. And I also think too, like a personal note, like even now I'm learning things about myself that I like that I've never explored before, and thinking, man, I would love to be a part of that or do more of that in my job, and maybe my career will even shift a little bit and do something different, and so yeah, I think that's maybe the advice I'd give. It's so scary, right, when you're about to go to college and it's like you have to make the right decision or like your whole life's off track, and it's so early in your life. And so I would just say that do something that's exciting to you and take a step and explore it. And if you don't like it, then just change and go explore something else and see what you can do with that. I'd also say too that maybe I wasn't super clear in the last question, but you definitely, if maybe college isn't for you, that doesn't mean you can't be a part of space, right? And so I think that there's a job opportunity for every type of person in this industry and probably a lot of exciting industries. And that could be engineers, that could be like the smartest people ever, that could be people who love to be mechanics and work with their hands, and or like electricians or construction. There's right, all of those people are needed. And so that's maybe another thought too, is that Maybe you really like space, but you're not super interested in engineering. That doesn't mean there's not a spot for you here too, you know?
That's wonderful advice. Thank you. That's really great to have there. That's yeah, I think that's important for them to be able to see that. And it is odd the changing world as far as where the jobs are. Like you have a hype video, and the person who I don't know if the person or company behind that, uh, like they might not have a background anything about space, but they can still make an awesome space hype video for
Yeah,
that and the filming of that and the like. There's so many other things that go into it that still make a big difference, even if it
absolutely.
might not be the engineer. Even though the engineer, I don't know if they're considered the heroes of the spotlight on your end, but people think engineers do rockets, rocket engineers there, but there's so much else behind it, and that matters. Um,
Yeah,
Excellent. I'll share a humorous piece with you,
that's it.
just related to this. I'm so glad that you're here and that somebody responded to me and I was able to do this. When I reached out to you guys end of December at first, when I was scrambling trying to get things together, knowing I was only going to have a limited number of days in my classroom, um, nobody responded at first, and I thought there's a couple people I reached out to at once, and I'm like, well, what email address could I add on to info at Stoke Space? Because I just first sent to your general info at Stoke Space. I'm like, if I could add one slightly more personal email, and I'm looking up, okay, contact, who can I contact? And I think it was honestly a separate, it was either have you gotten a NASA contract?
Mhm.
I think that was it. I think I honestly found part of the NASA contract, and there was one email address on the NASA contract, and I copied that, put it in there. And then out of curiosity, I'm like, this is Andy at Stoke Space. Maybe I should check who is Andy that I'm probably about to add to this email. I mean, Andy, you know who
The
Andy is.
CEO, yeah.
Then I laughed to myself after, like, I told my wife, I'm like, I just emailed the co-founder of this company who's this and this. And then I laughed even more when he was responding a couple hours later, being like, "Oh yeah, we're already aware of this, talking about it and trying to figure out who to
That's
hook you up
awesome.
with." And that's probably one of the fun pieces of working with a 70-person company that's making waves is um, there's a limited number of names that
Yeah,
you have
everyone
there.
does everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, everyone does everything. Yeah.
but
No
I
task is too
appreciate
small, I would say.
yeah,
But
and I
yeah,
appreciate that you guys responded for that.
yeah,
Big and
absolutely.
small, thank you. You've done wonderful with all of my questions. I greatly appreciate it. And your head of marketing even made sure I had the information to be able to share with my students as
I know
far as
Jen is awesome.
yeah.
She's the one behind that video too. Just like she made it happen for us. So yeah, she's great.
This is perfect. I very much appreciate your time. Thank you for this. I'm going to be watching you guys because I'm excited for where you're going to be going with this.
Awesome.
And I'm going to go ahead and hit end recording over here for this.